The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Grand Metropolitan Hotel, casting long golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Maylin adjusted her name tag and smoothed down her navy blazer, preparing for another day at the front desk. At 32, she wasn't exactly where she had planned to be in life, but she had learned to find pride in every job she did well. Coffee? A voice called from behind her. May turned to see Raj, one of the bellhops, holding out a steaming cup. "You're a lifesaver," she said, accepting it gratefully. "Late night studying again?" Raj nodded knowingly. Most of the staff were aware of May's double life. Hotel employee by day, medical resident during her other waking hours. The arrangement wasn't ideal, but medical school debt didn't pay itself, and the flexible hours at the Grand Metropolitan allowed her to maintain her hospital rotations. "Big conference today," Raj mentioned, nodding toward the main ballroom where staff were busily arranging chairs and testing microphones. Tech bigwigs from all over. "Apparently we're supposed to treat them like royalty." May took a sip of her coffee and logged into the front desk computer. "So business as usual then?" They shared a laugh before Raj hurried off to help an arriving guest with luggage. May scanned the day's schedule on her screen. The National Technology Innovation Summit would bring in over 200 executives, including some of the wealthiest people in the industry. The note from management emphasized discretion, efficiency, and anticipatory service, hotel speak for predicting guests' needs before they even realized they had them. Her colleague Thomas arrived for his shift, bringing with him the faint scent of cologne and the energy of someone who had gotten a full night's sleep. "Ready for the invasion?" he asked cheerfully, settling in at the terminal beside hers. "As I'll ever be," May replied, finishing the last of her coffee. She could already feel the familiar tension headache forming behind her eyes, the result of only 4 hours of sleep after a grueling shift at the hospital. She had assisted on a particularly challenging appendectomy that had complications, keeping her at the hospital well past midnight. The first wave of conference attendees began trickling in around 8, with the real rush expected closer to 9 when the opening keynote was scheduled. May and Thomas worked in tandem, checking in guests with practiced efficiency. Most were middle management types, eager to network and clearly excited about the day ahead. They were easy enough to handle. A smile, a room key, and directions to the conference center were all that was required. "Is that—" Thomas whispered suddenly, subtly nodding toward the grand entrance where a small entourage had just entered. May glanced over casually, maintaining her professional composure even as she recognized Thomas Blackwood, founder and CEO of Nexus Technologies. Even someone as disconnected from the tech world as May knew who he was. His face had been on the cover of Time magazine just last month, celebrating his company's breakthrough in artificial intelligence. With a net worth estimated at over $11 billion, he was easily the wealthiest person to ever stand in front of her desk. "Mr. Blackwood, welcome to the Grand Metropolitan," May said warmly as the group approached. "We have your suite prepared and your requested arrangements in place." The billionaire looked tired, she thought. Up close, the lines around his eyes were deeper than they appeared in photographs, and there was a slight slump to his shoulders that his perfectly tailored suit couldn't quite disguise. Still, he managed a polite smile. "Thank you," he said simply, as one of his assistants stepped forward to handle the actual check-in details. May noticed Blackwood absently rubbing his left arm, a gesture that triggered her medical instincts. She observed him more carefully as his assistant spoke, noting his slightly ashen complexion and the light sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the hotel's perfectly regulated temperature. "Sir, are you feeling all right?" she asked, interrupting the assistant mid-sentence. Blackwood looked startled, then dismissed her concern with a wave. "Just tired from the flight? Red-eye from San Francisco." His assistant shot May an annoyed look before continuing with the check-in process. May completed the transaction professionally, but kept a watchful eye on Blackwood as he and his entourage moved toward the elevators. Something about his appearance had triggered her clinical instincts, but she knew better than to press the issue with someone she had just met, especially someone of his stature. "Did you see how many security people he had with him?" Thomas whispered once they were out of earshot. May nodded, still distracted by Blackwood's appearance. "Listen, I'm going to take my break a little early. Cover for me?" Without waiting for Thomas's response, she stepped out from behind the desk and walked briskly toward the staff area. Once in the break room, she pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to Dr. Rivera, her supervising physician at the hospital. Male, late 50s, presenting with left arm discomfort, pallor diaphoresis, previous medical history unknown. Would you recommend further assessment? While waiting for a response, May poured herself a glass of water. She knew she was probably overreacting. Wealthy executives were often stressed and sleep-deprived, especially when traveling. Still, those symptoms together were concerning enough that she couldn't simply ignore them. Her phone buzzed with Dr. Rivera's reply. Classic warning signs. BP and pulse, family history, current medications. Without more info, would advise medical evaluation to rule out cardiac event. May sighed, pocketing her phone. She couldn't exactly march up to Blackwood's luxury suite and demand to take his vital signs. That would be overstepping every professional boundary, not to mention potentially jeopardizing her job at the hotel. The best she could do was stay alert and be prepared if anything happened during his stay. When she returned to the front desk, the lobby was buzzing with activity. More conference attendees had arrived, and the line for check-in stretched across the marble floor. Thomas gave her a relieved look as she resumed her position. "Everything okay?" he asked between guests. "Fine," she replied, logging back into her terminal. "Just needed a minute." The morning progressed at a frantic pace. By 11, most of the conference attendees had checked in and headed to the event spaces. May was just about to suggest to Thomas that they take lunch in shifts when her radio crackled to life. "Front desk, this is security. We need medical assistance in the Sapphire Ballroom immediately. Does anyone have medical training?" "Over." May grabbed her radio so quickly she nearly dropped it. "This is May at the front desk. I'm a medical resident." "What's the situation?" "Over. Male guest appears to be having some kind of attack. Clutching his chest, difficulty breathing." "Over." Her mind immediately went to Blackwood, but it could be any of the conference attendees. "On my way. Has someone called 911? "Over." "Affirmative. ETA 6 minutes. Over." May turned to Thomas, already removing her blazer. "I have to go. Call Dr. Patel from the medical office downstairs. Have him bring the emergency kit with the AED. Thomas nodded, reaching for the phone as May hurried from behind the desk. The Sapphire Ballroom was on the other side of the hotel, and May moved as quickly as she could without actually running, which would only cause more panic among the guests. Her mind raced through cardiac emergency protocols as she navigated through the crowded lobby. She could hear the commotion before she even reached the ballroom. Raised voices, someone shouting commands, the distinct sound of panic rippling through a crowd. Pushing through the double doors, she found a scene of chaos. A group of people had gathered in a tight circle near the refreshment table. Security guards were attempting to create space, asking people to step back. "I'm a doctor," May called out, her voice carrying with unexpected authority. "Let me through, please." The crowd parted reluctantly, revealing a man on the floor. It was indeed Thomas Blackwood, now lying on his back, his face contorted in pain. His skin had taken on a grayish tinge, and his breathing was rapid and shallow. A security guard knelt beside him, looking utterly lost. "How long has he been like this?" May asked, dropping to her knees beside Blackwood and immediately reaching for his wrist to check his pulse. "Just collapsed about 2 minutes ago," someone answered. "He was in the middle of a conversation and just went down." Blackwood's pulse was rapid and irregular. May leaned close to his face. "Mr. Blackwood, I'm May. I'm a doctor."
"Can you tell me what you're feeling right now?"
"Chest crushing," he managed to gasp. "Can't breathe. Has this happened before?" she asked, already working to loosen his tie and unbutton his collar. He shook his head weakly, then grimaced as another wave of pain hit him. "Is there a history of heart disease in your family?" May continued, conducting her assessment with calm efficiency despite the growing crowd of onlookers. "Father."
"Heart attack."
52, Blackwood whispered. One of his assistants pushed forward. "He takes medication for high blood pressure and high cholesterol. No previous cardiac events." May nodded, her suspicions confirmed. Every sign pointed to a heart attack in progress. "Where's that AED?" she called out, not taking her eyes off her patient. "On its way," a security guard replied. Turning back to Blackwood, May placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Mr. Blackwood, I believe you're having a heart attack. Help is on the way. I need you to stay as calm as possible. Try to take slow, deep breaths." Someone in the crowd was recording with their phone. May shot them a stern look. "Please put that away and give us some privacy." Surprisingly, they complied. Someone started to move him. A woman's voice said from the crowd. But then you came in. May felt a chill run down her spine. Moving someone during a cardiac event could worsen their condition dramatically. Nobody move him, she said firmly. He needs to stay still until the paramedics arrive. She could hear sirens in the distance now, growing louder. Just a few more minutes. She continued her assessment, monitoring Blackwood's pulse and breathing while trying to keep him conscious and calm. You're going to be okay, she told him, though she knew the situation was precarious. The ambulance is almost here. Just stay with me. Blackwood's eyes locked with hers, filled with fear but also a strange clarity. In that moment, May wasn't a hotel employee with crushing student debt or a tired resident at the end of a long shift. She was simply a doctor, the only barrier between this man and death, ready to fight with every bit of knowledge and skill she possessed. The crowd around them had grown larger. Whispers rippled through the gathered executives and hotel staff. May tried to block them out, focusing entirely on Blackwood. His breathing was becoming more labored, and his grip on her hand had weakened noticeably in just the last minute. Everyone back up. Please, May commanded, her voice steady despite the racing of her own heart. He needs air. A security guard stepped forward, helping to create a wider circle around them. Paramedics are pulling up now, he informed her. May nodded without looking up. Mr. Blackwood, stay with me. The ambulance is here. Just a few more moments. His eyes had begun to flutter closed. May checked his pulse again, weaker, more erratic. Warning bells sounded in her mind. She had assisted with enough cardiac cases during her residency to recognize when a situation was deteriorating rapidly. Where's that AED? She called out, her calm exterior beginning to crack. As if in answer to her question, Dr. Patel burst through the doors, emergency kit in hand. He quickly assessed the situation and knelt beside May. Suspected myocardial infarction, she reported succinctly. Pulses weakening, respiration increasingly labored. No AED applied yet. Dr. Patel nodded, already opening the kit. Good work, Dr. Lin. I'll take it from here. I've established rapport with the patient, May replied firmly. Let's work together. If Dr. Patel was surprised by her assertiveness, he didn't show it. Together they worked to prepare the AED, cutting away Blackwood's expensive shirt to attach the pads to his chest. The ballroom had fallen eerily silent. The only sounds the rustling of medical equipment and Blackwood's increasingly strained breathing. Somewhere a phone was ringing unanswered. Clear. Dr. Patel called out as the AED finished its analysis and prepared to deliver a shock. May removed her hands from Blackwood and watched as his body jerked slightly with the electrical current. Immediately after, she checked for a pulse. Still irregular but stronger, she reported. Breathing seems to have stabilized slightly. The doors burst open again as paramedics arrived, wheeling a stretcher. May felt a wave of relief wash over her as the professionals took charge of the scene. She and Dr. Patel quickly briefed them on Blackwood's condition and the steps they had taken. Good call with the AED, the lead paramedic said, already attaching more sophisticated monitoring equipment to Blackwood. You likely saved his life with that one. As they prepared to move Blackwood onto the stretcher, his eyes opened again, finding May's face among the crowd of people now hovering over him. Thank you, he managed to whisper. Save your strength, May told him gently. These people will take good care of you now. The paramedics worked efficiently, stabilizing Blackwood for transport and administering medication to help manage his pain and improve his heart function. Within minutes, they were ready to move. Which hospital are you taking him to? May asked as they lifted the stretcher. County General, the paramedic replied. Best cardiac unit in the area. May nodded, knowing the hospital well. It was where she did her residency. I'll call ahead to Dr. Sharma. He's the best cardiologist on staff. As the paramedics wheeled Blackwood toward the exit, one of his assistants broke away from the stunned group of colleagues and hurried after them. I'll go with him, the young man said, his face pale with shock. The crowd began to disperse slowly, murmuring among themselves. The excitement was over, but the impact of what they had witnessed lingered in the air. May stood rooted to the spot, the adrenaline that had carried her through the crisis beginning to ebb, leaving her feeling suddenly exhausted. Dr. Patel touched her shoulder lightly. You did good work today, May. That man has a fighting chance because of you. She managed a small smile. Just doing my job? Which job would that be? He asked with a knowing look. Hotel employee or doctor? Both, I guess, she replied, looking down at her hands. They were steady, despite everything. I need to call the hospital. Dr. Patel nodded. Use my office, and take your time coming back to the desk. I'll speak with your manager. May thanked him and headed for the exit, aware of the eyes following her. The whispers had already started. Who was this hotel employee who had stepped in like a seasoned emergency physician? She quickened her pace, wanting to escape the attention. In Dr. Patel's quiet office, May sank into a chair and picked up the phone. She dialed a number she knew by heart. Cardiac unit. This is Nurse Chen, a familiar voice answered. Chen, it's Mei Lin. Listen, you're about to receive a VIP patient, Thomas Blackwood, the tech billionaire, suspected major heart attack. I was first on the scene. Wait, you were there? Aren't you working at the hotel today? Long story, May said, rubbing her temples. Is Dr. Sharma available? Blackwood's going to need the best. He's in surgery, but I'll page him immediately. What's the ETA on the patient? Should be there in less than 10 minutes. They left about 5 minutes ago. Got it. I'll make sure everything's ready. There was a pause. Are you okay, May? You sound shaken. May hadn't realized how her voice might sound to someone who knew her well. I'm fine. It was just intense. He collapsed right in front of me, Chen. If I hadn't been there, if I hadn't noticed the symptoms earlier. But you were, and you did, Chen said firmly. That's what matters. Look, I've got to prep for this arrival, but come by when your shift ends. The team will want to hear the full story. Thanks, Chen. I'll try. After hanging up, May sat for a moment in the silence of the office, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. She had potentially saved the life of one of the wealthiest men in the country, all because she happened to be working a shift at her second job. The universe had a strange sense of humor sometimes. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Raj, the bellhop who had brought her coffee that morning. Was it really just a few hours ago? Everyone's talking about what you did, he said, his eyes wide with admiration. They're saying you saved that rich guy's life. May shook her head. We don't know that yet. The hospital will... The hotel manager wants to see you, Raj interrupted. Like right away. A knot formed in May's stomach. Had she overstepped? Would there be consequences for leaving her post without permission? The hotel had strict policies about employees interfering with guests even in emergencies. Did he seem angry? She asked, standing up and smoothing down her rumpled clothes. Raj shrugged. Hard to tell with him. But there are some pretty important people waiting in his office, too. That didn't sound good. May took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. Whatever happened, she had done the right thing. That was what mattered. When she arrived at the manager's office, she was surprised to find not only Mr. Ortiz, the hotel manager, but also 3 men in expensive suits whom she recognized as conference attendees. They all turned to look at her as she entered. Ah, Ms. Lin, Mr. Ortiz said, rising from his seat. Or should I say Dr. Lin? Please come in. His tone wasn't angry. If anything, he sounded impressed. Mee stepped cautiously into the office. These gentlemen are colleagues of Mr. Blackwood, Mr. Ortiz explained. They wanted to meet the person who saved his life. One of the men stepped forward, extending his hand. Greg Watson, Chief Operations Officer at Nexus Technologies. What you did in there was nothing short of miraculous. May shook his hand, feeling oddly disconnected from the moment. I just did what any doctor would do. But that's just it, another of the men said. You're not just any doctor. You're a hotel employee who happened to be a doctor. If you hadn't been there. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We've just received word from the hospital, Watson continued. Thomas is stable. They're preparing him for emergency surgery, but the doctors are optimistic. They said the quick response on site made all the difference. May felt a wave of relief wash over her. That's wonderful news. We'd like to do something to thank you, the third man said. Thomas would want that. May raised her hands. That's really not necessary. I was just doing my job. Which job? Watson asked with a small smile, echoing Dr. Patel's earlier question. Before May could respond, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She glanced at the screen and saw a text from Chen at the hospital. Dr. Sharma says Blackwood asking for the hotel doctor when he woke up briefly. Says he wants to thank you personally when he's recovered. May felt a strange mix of emotions. Relief that Blackwood was conscious enough to speak. Embarrassment at being singled out. And a tiny spark of pride that she had made such an impression. Ms. Lin has been an exemplary employee, Mr. Ortiz was saying. We had no idea she was also completing a medical residency. It speaks to her exceptional character and work ethic. The men nodded in agreement, looking at May with newfound respect. If there's ever anything Nexus Technologies can do for you, Watson said, handing her his business card, please don't hesitate to ask. Thomas will want to thank you himself when he's recovered. But in the meantime, please know that you have our deepest gratitude. May accepted the card awkwardly, unused to such attention. Thank you, but really I was just in the right place at the right time. As the men filed out of the office, Mr. Ortiz turned to May with an unreadable expression. You know, when we hired you, you mentioned you were studying medicine. I had no idea you were so advanced in your training. I didn't want it to seem like the hotel job was just a stopgap, May admitted. I needed the income, but I also take this position seriously. Mr. Ortiz nodded slowly. Well, after today's events, I think we need to have a conversation about your future here. Perhaps a more flexible schedule to accommodate your medical career, or a position that better utilizes your skills. May blinked in surprise. This was not the outcome she had expected when Raj told her the manager wanted to see her. That would be very generous, she said carefully. It's the least we can do for the employee who just saved the life of one of the wealthiest men in America in our ballroom. Mr. Ortiz replied with a wry smile. Now take the rest of the day off. I suspect this story is just beginning. 3 days passed before May heard anything substantial about Thomas Blackwood's condition. She had returned to work at the hotel, where she had become something of a celebrity among the staff. Colleagues who had barely spoken to her before now stopped to chat, asking for details about the dramatic rescue. Guests who had witnessed the event pointed her out to new arrivals. It was all rather uncomfortable for someone who preferred to work quietly behind the scenes. There she is, our hero, Thomas announced as May arrived for her shift on Wednesday morning. He made a mock bow as she approached the front desk. Please don't, May said, feeling her cheeks warm with embarrassment. It's been 3 days. Can we talk about something else? Not likely, Raj chimed in as he passed by with a luggage cart. You're famous now. I heard some guests asking if you were working today. They wanted your autograph. May rolled her eyes, though she couldn't help but smile a little at the absurdity of it all. Any messages for me? She asked Thomas, trying to steer the conversation back to work. Just the usual room service complaints and, oh, Thomas reached beneath the counter and pulled out an elaborate flower arrangement. These came for you about an hour ago. May stared at the stunning display of orchids and lilies. Who sent them? Thomas handed her a small envelope. Card sealed. But the delivery guy said they came from County General Hospital. With slightly trembling fingers, May opened the envelope and read the handwritten note inside. To the angel in the hotel lobby who recognized what others missed. The doctors tell me I wouldn't be here without your quick action. I'd like to thank you in person when you have time. Just ask for me at County General, they know to expect you. Thomas Blackwood. May read the note twice, then carefully tucked it back into the envelope. She wasn't sure how to feel. On one hand, she was relieved that Blackwood had recovered enough to write a note. On the other hand, the personal nature of his thanks made her uneasy. She had only been doing what any doctor would do in that situation. Well, Thomas prompted, curiosity written all over his face. What does the billionaire have to say? He's feeling better, May replied simply, sliding the card into her pocket. And he says thank you. Before Thomas could press for more details, Mr. Ortiz appeared, looking unusually cheerful. Dr. Lin. Just the person I wanted to see. Could you step into my office for a moment? May followed him, wondering what this could be about. Had he reconsidered his offer of a more flexible schedule? As she entered his office, she was surprised to find Dr. Patel already there, along with a woman she didn't recognize, a sharp-featured woman in an expensive suit. May, this is Ms. Diane Winters, Mr. Ortiz said. She's Mr. Blackwood's personal attorney. The woman stood and extended her hand. Her grip was firm and confident. Dr. Lin, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've heard a great deal about your quick thinking the other day. Thank you, May said cautiously. How is Mr. Blackwood doing? Remarkably well, thanks to you, Ms. Winters replied. The doctors say he should make a full recovery. Which brings me to why I'm here. She opened her briefcase and removed a folder. Mr. Blackwood has instructed me to discuss a matter of some importance with you. May glanced at Mr. Ortiz, who nodded encouragingly. Please have a seat. he said, gesturing to the chairs around his desk. Once they were all seated, Ms. Winters continued. Mr. Blackwood was deeply moved by your actions. Not just the medical intervention which saved his life, but the fact that you recognized his symptoms earlier in the day when he checked in. May looked up in surprise. He remembered that? Indeed. His assistant mentioned that you had asked if he was feeling all right, and that he had dismissed your concern. Ms. Winters smiled slightly. He regrets that now, of course. Anyone with medical training would have noticed, May said modestly. He was showing classic warning signs. Perhaps, but not everyone with medical training was there. You were? Ms. Winters opened the folder. Mr. Blackwood has a rather direct way of showing gratitude. He's asked me to offer you a position as his personal physician. May blinked, certain she had misheard. I'm sorry, what? A personal physician, Ms. Winters repeated. With a starting salary of $350,000 per year plus benefits. You would travel with him, monitor his health, and coordinate with specialists as needed. The room seemed to tilt slightly. May gripped the arms of her chair. But I haven't even completed my residency. I'm not board certified yet. Mr. Blackwood is aware of that. He's prepared to wait until you complete your training. In the meantime, he'd like to offer you this. Ms. Winters slid a document across the desk. May picked it up and scanned the first page. It took a moment for the words to register. This is a grant, Ms. Winters confirmed. Mr. Blackwood wishes to pay off your medical school debt in full and cover the remainder of your residency expenses. May felt lightheaded. Her medical school debt was just over $280,000, a crushing burden that had forced her to take the hotel job in the first place. To have it simply erased. I can't accept this, she said finally, setting the document down. It's too much, Ms. Winters looked genuinely surprised. Mr. Blackwood anticipated you might say that. He asked me to remind you that his net worth is over $11 billion. This amount is insignificant to him. But what you did was not insignificant to him at all. Dr. Patel, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. If I may, I've known Thomas Blackwood for many years. He's been a donor to our hospital. He's not a man who accepts debts, either financial or personal. By refusing, you might actually cause him more distress than by accepting. May looked between the three faces watching her. I need time to think about this. Of course, Ms. Winters said smoothly. Take all the time you need. The offer has no expiration date. She handed May a business card. Call me when you've decided. Or if you'd prefer to discuss this with Mr. Blackwood directly. He's expecting you at the hospital. After Ms. Winters left, May sat in stunned silence. Mr. Ortiz cleared his throat. It seems you have some decisions to make, he said gently. I didn't do it for money, May said, still trying to process what had just happened. I would have done the same for anyone. We know that, Dr. Patel assured her. That's precisely why Blackwood wants to help you. People like him, they don't often encounter genuine kindness without an agenda. May nodded slowly, though she still felt overwhelmed. I should get back to work. Actually, Mr. Ortiz said, I've arranged coverage for your shift today. I thought you might want to visit the hospital. See how your patient is doing. Patient. The word struck May as odd. Blackwood wasn't really her patient. He had been a hotel guest in distress whom she had helped. But perhaps that had changed the moment she stepped forward and said, I'm a doctor. The drive to County General took 20 minutes, during which May tried to organize her thoughts. By the time she pulled into the parking garage, she had decided to thank Blackwood for his generous offer but decline it politely. She couldn't in good conscience accept such an enormous gift for simply doing what she had trained to do. The hospital was familiar territory. She had walked these halls hundreds of times during her residency. She made her way to the cardiac care unit, where she found Nurse Chen at the nurses' station. Well, look who finally showed up, Chen said with a grin. Our celebrity doctor, May groaned. Not you too. Are you kidding? The whole hospital's talking about it. Dr. Sharma said the quick defibrillation probably saved not just his life but his brain function too. Another few minutes and Chen made a grim gesture. I'm here to see him, May said. Is he up for visitors? Chen nodded. He's been asking for you every day. Room 412, but brace yourself. He's got visitors. May made her way down the hall, rehearsing what she would say. Thank you for your generous offer, but I cannot accept it. Simple, direct, respectful. She paused outside room 412, surprised to hear multiple voices inside. Taking a deep breath, she knocked lightly on the doorframe. The conversation inside stopped abruptly. "Come in," called a voice she recognized from the ballroom, weaker now, but still carrying authority. May stepped into the room and found herself facing not just Thomas Blackwood, propped up in the hospital bed, but 3 other people as well. The assistant who had accompanied him in the ambulance, an older woman who must be his wife, and a Dr. May recognized as Dr. Sharma, the head of cardiology. "Dr. Lin," Blackwood said, a smile spreading across his face. "At last." "Mr. Blackwood," May replied, suddenly feeling awkward. "I'm glad to see you're recovering well." "Thanks to you," he said, gesturing to the chair beside his bed. "Please join us." "We were just discussing the foundation." May sat down hesitantly. "Foundation?" Dr. Sharma stepped forward. "Thomas has decided to establish a foundation to help medical residents with financial hardships. He's naming it after you." May felt her face flush. That's really not necessary." "On the contrary," Blackwood said, his expression serious now. "It's very necessary. Do you know what the average medical school debt is in this country? Over $200,000. How are we supposed to get the best care when our brightest young doctors are working second jobs just to make ends meet?" May didn't know how to respond to that. It was true. Many of her fellow residents were struggling with debt, working extra shifts, moonlighting at urgent care centers, even driving for rideshare companies on their rare days off. "My husband has always been passionate about efficiency," Mrs. Blackwood said, speaking for the first time. "He sees a problem, he fixes it. And apparently, nearly losing his life has made him even more direct in his approach." "I've been given a second chance," Blackwood said simply. "I don't intend to waste it." He looked so earnest, so determined that May felt her resolve weakening. Perhaps there was a way to accept his help without compromising her principles, especially if it would benefit other struggling medical students as well. 2 weeks after her visit to the hospital, May found herself in a situation she never could have imagined. She sat in a sleek conference room on the top floor of the Nexus Technologies headquarters, surrounded by lawyers, financial advisors, and Thomas Blackwood himself, now looking remarkably recovered, though still moving with the careful deliberation of someone who had recently faced his own mortality. "So it's settled then," Blackwood said, signing the last document with a flourish. "The Lynn Medical Scholars Foundation is officially established with an initial endowment of $50 million. May felt slightly dizzy at the figure. When she had finally agreed to let Blackwood help pay off her debt, she never imagined it would expand into this. "And you're absolutely certain about the name?" she asked for what must have been the 10th time. "It really doesn't need to have my name on it." Blackwood handed the pen to her. "Absolutely certain. Your name represents exactly what this foundation stands for. Recognizing medical talent wherever it exists and removing the financial barriers that might prevent that talent from reaching its full potential." After much discussion over the past 2 weeks, May had come to a compromise with Blackwood. She would accept his offer to pay off her medical school debt, but only if it was structured as the first grant from a foundation that would help other medical students and residents in similar situations. That way, her unexpected good fortune would extend to others as well. What she hadn't anticipated was Blackwood's enthusiasm for the project. What had started as a simple scholarship fund had quickly evolved into a comprehensive foundation with multiple programs: debt relief for residents, scholarships for medical students from disadvantaged backgrounds, grants for medical education research, and even a mentorship program pairing established physicians with promising students. "Your signature." "Dr. Lin," prompted Ms. Winters, sliding the final document across the polished table. May signed her name, still half expecting to wake up from what felt like an elaborate dream, but the scratching of the pen on paper was real, as was the applause that broke out around the table when she finished. "Congratulations," said Blackwood, standing up to shake her hand. "You've just helped change the future of medical education." "I still think you're giving me too much credit," May replied. "This is your vision, your money." "Perhaps," he acknowledged with a slight smile. "But it was your action that inspired it. Sometimes all it takes is one person doing the right thing at the right moment to set something important in motion." As the meeting concluded and people began to file out, Blackwood asked May to stay behind. When they were alone, he sat back down, his expression turning more serious. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you," he said. "Something more personal." May nodded, waiting for him to continue. "The cardiologists tell me I need to make some significant lifestyle changes," Blackwood said, tapping his fingers absently on the table. "Less stress, better diet, more exercise, regular checkups. The usual advice for someone who's had a major cardiac event." "That sounds wise," May agreed. "Heart attacks often serve as wake-up calls." "The thing is," Blackwood continued, "I'm not particularly good at slowing down. I've built my entire career on working harder and faster than everyone else. My wife says I don't know how to relax." He smiled ruefully. "She's probably right." "Recovery takes time," May said gently. "Your body needs to heal, and that means giving yourself permission to step back temporarily." "Temporarily, yes. But eventually I need to find a sustainable way forward. Which brings me back to my original offer." He leaned forward slightly. "I still want you to consider becoming my personal physician once you complete your residency." May had been expecting this. The job offer had been temporarily set aside during the discussions about the foundation, but she had known it would resurface eventually. "I'm honored that you would trust me with your health," she said carefully. "But I've been training to work in emergency medicine. It's what I love, the intensity, the problem-solving, the immediate impact. Being a personal physician is different." "It doesn't have to be," Blackwood countered. "What if the role were more flexible? What if, in addition to monitoring my health, you had the freedom to continue practicing emergency medicine? Or what if you could divide your time between clinical work and overseeing the Foundation's programs?" May hadn't considered those possibilities. The idea of having a foot in both worlds, clinical practice and the Foundation, was appealing. "I'd need to think about it," she said finally. "It's a big decision." "Of course," Blackwood agreed. "There's no rush. Take all the time you need." He stood up, signaling the end of their conversation. "Just know that the offer remains open." As May left the Nexus building and stepped into the bright afternoon sunlight, she felt oddly weightless. In just 2 weeks, her life had changed in ways she never could have predicted. Her crushing debt was gone. Her career suddenly had options she had never considered. And somehow she had become the face of a multi-million-dollar foundation. Her phone buzzed with a text from Chen. "How did the big meeting go?" "Are you officially a millionaire yet?" May smiled and texted back. "Not a millionaire. Just debt-free with a job offer to consider. Coming to your place tonight to tell you all about it." On her drive back to her apartment, May reflected on the strange chain of events that had led her here. If she hadn't taken that hotel job to make ends meet, if she hadn't been working that particular shift, if she hadn't noticed Blackwood's symptoms when he checked in, so many small decisions and coincidences that had aligned to put her in exactly the right place at the right time. When she arrived home, she found a package waiting outside her door. It was beautifully wrapped with a small card attached. The card read simply, "A small token of appreciation. TB." Inside the box was a stethoscope. Not just any stethoscope, but the top-of-the-line model that most residents could only dream of owning. It was lightweight, with perfect acoustics and a comfortable grip. May had tried one once during a medical equipment demonstration and had been amazed at the difference it made in hearing subtle heart sounds. She held it carefully, admiring the craftsmanship. Then she put it around her neck, where it settled with a comforting weight. It felt right there, a reminder of who she was and what she was meant to do. Her phone rang. It was Dr. Rivera from the hospital. "May, I just heard the news about the foundation," he said when she answered. "Congratulations. That's incredible." "Thank you," she replied, still getting used to accepting praise for something that felt more like luck than achievement. "It's all happened so fast." "Well, you deserve it. And listen, I wanted to ask, the Foundation's mentorship program you mentioned, is there room for more mentors? I'd like to volunteer my time." "Absolutely," May said, surprised and touched by the offer. "We're still building the program, but we'd love to have experienced physicians like you involved." "Excellent. And one more thing, there's an interesting case in the ER right now. Young patient with unusual cardiac symptoms. I thought you might want to observe given your recent celebrity status in cardiology," May laughed. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. As she grabbed her keys and headed back out, May felt a surge of excitement. This was what she loved. The challenge of diagnosis, the rush of solving a medical puzzle, the opportunity to help someone in their moment of greatest need. Whatever she decided about Blackwood's job offer, whatever direction the foundation took, this would always be at the core of who she was. She arrived at the hospital and made her way to the emergency department, where the familiar controlled chaos greeted her. Dr. Rivera waved her over to a treatment room where a team was already gathered around a patient. "Dr. Lin," he said with a smile, perfect timing as usual, as May stepped into the room, putting on gloves and reaching for her new stethoscope. She felt something settle inside her, a certainty that had been missing before. Whatever the future held, she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The attending physician looked up as she approached. "Dr. Lin, I've heard a lot about you. They say you can spot heart trouble from across a hotel lobby." "Just got lucky," May replied modestly, moving to examine the patient. "What have we got?" As the team briefed her on the case, May felt fully present in a way she hadn't in a long time. The weight of debt and financial worry that had been her constant companion through medical school and residency was gone, allowing her to focus completely on what mattered most, the patient in front of her. Later, as she helped stabilize the young patient and prepare them for transfer to the cardiac unit, Dr. Rivera pulled her aside. "You know, I was a bit worried about you when I heard about all this foundation business," he admitted. "Thought maybe we'd lose you to the corporate world." May shook her head. "Not a chance. This is where I belong." "Good," Dr. Rivera said with evident relief, "because you're going to be an exceptional doctor, May, the kind that makes a difference." As May walked through the hospital corridors afterward, she passed the cardiac care unit where Blackwood had stayed. She paused for a moment, thinking about how a single moment, one person in distress, another stepping forward to help, had created ripples that would eventually touch countless lives through the foundation. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time wasn't just luck, she realized. Sometimes it was exactly where you were meant to be all along. 6 months later, May stood at the podium in the Grand Metropolitan Hotel's largest ballroom, the same space where, half a year earlier, she had knelt beside Thomas Blackwood and fought to save his life. Today, the room was transformed, filled with round tables and well-dressed guests attending the first annual Lynn Medical Scholars Foundation Gala. "When I rushed into this room 6 months ago," May said into the microphone, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I wasn't thinking about changing the medical education system or starting a foundation. I was simply doing what I had been trained to do, help someone in need." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. In the front row sat Thomas Blackwood and his wife, both beaming with pride. Beside them were May's parents, who had flown in from California for the event, still somewhat bewildered by their daughter's sudden rise to prominence. At other tables were her colleagues from the hospital, her former co-workers from the hotel, and dozens of healthcare professionals, donors, and the first class of scholarship recipients. "What happened that day changed my life," May continued. "But more importantly, it's now changing the lives of medical students across the country who might otherwise struggle to afford their education or complete their training while buried under debt." She gestured to a table where 5 young people sat, the first recipients of the foundation's scholarships. These brilliant future doctors represent exactly what this foundation stands for: recognizing talent and dedication, and removing the financial barriers that might hold them back. The crowd applauded warmly. May took a deep breath before continuing. "When Mr. Blackwood first approached me about starting this foundation, I was reluctant. I didn't feel I deserved such recognition for simply doing my job. But he helped me see a bigger picture, that sometimes an individual moment can spark something much larger, something that extends beyond one patient or one doctor." May looked directly at Blackwood as she spoke. He nodded slightly, encouraging her to continue. "In the past 6 months, we've awarded 5 full medical school scholarships, provided debt relief to 12 residents working in underserved communities, and launched a mentorship program connecting experienced physicians with students from disadvantaged backgrounds. And this is just the beginning." More applause filled the room. May felt a surge of pride, not for herself but for what the foundation had already accomplished. When she had finally agreed to accept Blackwood's help and lend her name to the foundation, she had insisted on being actively involved in shaping its programs. To her surprise, Blackwood had readily agreed. even appointing her to the board of directors. I'd like to conclude by sharing something I've learned through this experience, May said, her voice growing more passionate. Medicine isn't just about the technical skills we learn in school or the knowledge we gain through practice. It's about being present and attentive in moments that matter. It's about recognizing when someone needs help, even if they don't realize it themselves. She thought back to that morning when Blackwood had checked into the hotel, already showing subtle signs of cardiac distress that others had missed. Sometimes, being a good doctor means trusting your instincts and speaking up, even when it feels uncomfortable or intrusive, because that moment of discomfort might save a life. As May stepped away from the podium to thunderous applause, she caught sight of Dr. Patel giving her a thumbs up from his table. She smiled, remembering how he had arrived with the AED that crucial day, working alongside her to stabilize Blackwood before the paramedics arrived. The evening progressed with dinner, more speeches, and a successful fundraising auction that would further expand the foundation's reach. Throughout it all, May found herself reflecting on the journey of the past 6 months. After completing her residency 3 weeks ago, debt-free thanks to Blackwood's generosity, she had faced a decision about her future. Blackwood had maintained his offer of a position as his personal physician, sweetening the deal with the suggestion that she could split her time between caring for his health and directing the foundation's programs. It had been tempting. The salary was exceptional, the hours would be more regular than emergency medicine, and she had genuinely come to like and respect Blackwood during their many meetings about the foundation. But ultimately, May had followed her heart. She had accepted a position at County General's emergency department, where she had trained and where she felt most alive professionally. To her surprise, Blackwood had responded to her decision with understanding and respect. "You're meant to be where the action is," he had told her. "I get it. Just promise you'll still make time for the foundation." She had readily agreed, and they had worked out an arrangement where she would serve as the foundation's medical director on a part-time basis, reviewing applications and mentoring recipients while maintaining her clinical practice. As the gala wound down, Blackwood approached her, champagne glass in hand. "Excellent speech, Dr. Lin. You're becoming quite the public speaker." May laughed. "I still get nervous every time. Give me a medical emergency over a ballroom full of people any day." "Speaking of which," Blackwood said, lowering his voice slightly, "I have some news to share. I've decided to step back from day-to-day operations at Nexus." May raised her eyebrows in surprise. Blackwood was notorious for his hands-on management style and seemingly boundless energy. "That's unexpected. Is everything okay with your health?" "Better than okay," he assured her. "My last checkup was excellent. Blood pressure normal, cholesterol under control, heart function strong. But this whole experience has made me reconsider my priorities." He gestured around the room. "This foundation, the people we're helping, it feels more meaningful than another product launch or quarterly earnings report. I want to focus more of my time and resources here." "I'm glad to hear it," May said sincerely. "But won't you miss the excitement of running a tech giant?" Blackwood smiled. "Oh, I'm not retiring completely. Just scaling back to focus on what matters most. Life's too short to spend it all in board meetings." He raised his glass. "To second chances, Dr. Lin." "To second chances," May echoed, touching her glass to his. Later that evening, as the event wound down, May found herself back in the spot where Blackwood had collapsed 6 months earlier. The room was now nearly empty, with hotel staff beginning to clear tables and take down decorations. "Penny for your thoughts?" a voice asked. It was Raj, her former colleague from the hotel, now the events manager, a promotion he had received partly due to his calm handling of the chaos during Blackwood's heart attack. "Just thinking about how much has changed," May replied. 6 months ago I was checking in guests and worrying about how to pay my rent. Now you're Dr. Lin, medical director of a fancy foundation, savior of billionaires, and general hotel legend." Raj finished with a grin. "Not bad for a part-time front desk clerk." May laughed and swatted his arm playfully. "I'm still the same person." "Nah," Raj said, his expression turning more serious. "You were always a doctor, May, even when you were working here. The way you noticed things about people, the way you listened, that wasn't just good customer service. That was who you are." His words touched her deeply. "Thank you, Raj. So what's next for the famous Dr. Lin?" he asked. "Going to save any more billionaires?" "I hope not," May said with a smile. "Though I do start at County General next week." Who knows what will come through those doors? Well, if you need a break from all the excitement, we've still got your old uniform in the back, Raj joked. Front desk is always short-staffed on holidays. I'll keep that in mind, May laughed. Though I think my hotel days are behind me. As she left the ballroom, May paused to look back one last time. The space that had once been the scene of a life-or-death struggle was now just an elegant, empty room again. But for her, it would always be something more. The place where one critical moment had changed not just one life, but potentially thousands. The next week, May walked through the automatic doors of County General's emergency department, now wearing the white coat of an attending physician, rather than a resident's shorter coat. The familiar sounds and smells greeted her. The beeping of monitors, the squeak of gurney wheels on linoleum, the low murmur of staff exchanging information during shift change. Dr. Lin, the charge nurse called out, "Welcome back. We've got a full board this morning. MVA coming in 5 minutes, chest pain in bed 3, abdominal pain in bed 5, and a mystery fever in bed 7. Where would you like to start?" May smiled, feeling a surge of excitement and purpose. This was where she belonged, in the controlled chaos of the emergency room, making split-second decisions that could mean the difference between life and death. "I'll take the chest pain," she said, reaching for her stethoscope, the beautiful one Blackwood had given her, which now felt like an old friend around her neck. As she approached the patient's bed, Mee introduced herself with the words that now felt more true than ever before. "Hello, I'm Dr. Lin. I'm here to help you." 6 months ago, those same words spoken in a hotel ballroom had been the beginning of an extraordinary journey. But May knew that every time she said them, to every patient, in every moment of need, they carried the same power and the same promise. Sometimes being in the right place at the right time wasn't just about luck or coincidence. Sometimes it was about being the person you were always meant to be, ready to step forward when it mattered most.